next thing I know, Mike's calling me up on the phone asking, what's going on down there at Silver Cross, man? What are you into, and where are you looking to go with your career? Yeah, networking is a key piece to, advancing in your career and just getting to know people and opportunities.
Without supplies, there's no surgery. Without products, there's no patient care. Welcome to Power Supply, the healthcare supply chain podcast focused on helping you navigate the intricacies of logistics, purchasing, contracting, and supplier relationships. Each episode, we speak with healthcare executives, supply chain leaders, and innovative entrepreneurs from across the country as they share their stories, experience, and expertise on the industry we love. From the loading dock to strategic sourcing, from buyers to the C-suite and across the enterprise, we tackle the real-life issues impacting the healthcare supply chain. Whether you're tuning in for conversation or inspiration, we're glad you're here. You're just in time to hear it from the source and stock up on insight. So sit back and plug into Power Supply.
On this episode of Power Supply, we speak with Mike Hopkins, VP of Supply Chain at Northwestern Medicine, and Harold Dillow, VP of Supply Chain at TriHealth. They've known each other for quite a while, and we're going to be talking with them about strengthening the healthcare supply chain, thinking about the future of the industry, but also how you can develop talent within your own organization. What are some best practices and what are some key insights, especially for those of you out there that are maybe earlier in your career or just starting in leadership positions? How do you build that team and that team culture? Gary, I'm excited. I know these two, and they're just phenomenal. This is going to be a great interview today.
I know, Justin, you were talking about this one for a while. So excited to have them. Been hearing a lot about recruiters saying the old guard is leaving. A lot of them are retiring. So I'm really interested to see what their best practices are on networking with our young leaders emerging in supply chain to move us forward in the healthcare arena. I'm really excited to hear their collaboration and how they've moved forward in their long, lengthy career of knowing each other. So this should be good. Looking forward to hearing from them.
It's going to be a great one. Stay with us. Mike and Harold coming up next.
From the studios of Healthcare HQ, you're listening to Power Supply.
Joining us now, Mike Hopkins, VP of Supply Chain at Northwestern Medicine, and Harold Dillow, VP of Supply Chain at TriHealth. We're going to be talking about building our bench, strengthening the healthcare supply chain, and some best practices around talent development. And we kind of are going to tell this story with Mike and Harold today to kind of get people's juices flowing and thinking about just how important this is for the future of our industry. And so I want to welcome you both to the show. Mike, maybe we can start with you. Just tell everybody a little bit about yourself before we jump in.
Yeah, so like Justin said, Mike Hopkins, Vice President of Supply Chain for Northwestern Medicine. My entire career has pretty much been in healthcare supply chain. I didn't grow up as a kid dreaming about being a supply chain expert, but ended up here kind of by accident, and absolutely love the field, love what I do. Have worked with some amazing people along the way, and I'm one of those people that has grown up through supply chain from, the beginning of, stocking shelves way back when I was going to college. And that was the job I had to help put myself through school to now being Vice President of Supply Chain at Northwestern.
And Harold, how about you as well? I know we're going to hear some stories about working for Mike. So that should be fun today. And why don't you just talk about your path and how you wind up at TriHealth?
Yeah, thanks, Justin. My name's Harold Dillow, Vice President of Supply Chain at TriHealth in Cincinnati, Ohio. I've been at TriHealth for 3 years and had a couple healthcare supply chain stops before that with U Cincinnati Health and U Chicago Health, where I met Mike, and then spent about a decade in the automotive industry prior to jumping into healthcare. So similar in the sense that didn't grow up thinking I would be, in healthcare supply chain, but had an interesting career path, largely in part thanks to Mike, to transitioning industries and getting to where I am today. So
maybe real quick before we kind of have Mike tee up the conversation around talent development, what did have you move over to healthcare supply chain? Because you were in automotive, what was the impetus for the move and what drew you to healthcare?
Yeah. A lot of people ask me that question. And really, I think it was, the sense of purpose and mission that healthcare has. I'm a mechanical engineering degree, right? I mean, I don't know anything about healthcare when I first jumped into it, and had the privilege to work at Toyota for a long time and learned a lot of stuff there. And in healthcare, I started out in a small hospital in Southwest burbs of Chicago, and they were looking for a process improvement engineer. So, lean guy. And just, it was cool because implementing or teaching folks around us and why problem solving and fishbone diagrams and, all that sort of stuff was, standard work, was all new terms to this group. And it was just really cool to, have a purpose of teaching those tools and knowing that they're going to use them to actually help people, help save people's lives and care for people and stuff. Not to mention that the mission, in automotive isn't important in its own right. If the line goes down, it's $10,000 a minute. I mean, that's a dated figure. That's an early 2000s figure, right? So it's a really, really high stress environment too. But just having a different purpose and what you're doing is really making a difference was the main reason.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up FAS. For anybody who's been listening a while, they might remember one of our earlier episodes, but I'll just kind of call it out. If you're not familiar with FAS, definitely just take a look at those first few seasons or that first year of Power Supply. And there's an episode that really talks about us in healthcare and how to apply that concept. So Mike, what I'd like for you to do is just talk a little bit about your approach to developing talent in your organization, because I think you've got a pretty broad network and there's lots of individuals that have been on your team at one time or another that are now in leadership positions at various other organizations around the country.
Yeah, so I'm just going to kind of go back a little bit to, I started out in healthcare and I've worked with a lot of people along the way. Some people who were good mentors, and some that really that wasn't anything of their focus. And so there was a lot of times I felt like I was growing through my career, I was kind of beating my head against a wall, trying to figure out how to continue to grow myself, grow my career, the path that I needed to follow. And when I got to a place that I could affect that for other people, I wanted to make sure that that was never the case for them. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that there was a clear, defined path that, they could go from where they were today to where they wanted to get to. And, to kind of, echo off of what Harold said, I think one of the biggest skills you can teach. I mean, kind of grew up through the lean 5S way as well. But I think the biggest thing you can teach people is how to be problem solvers, right? How to proactively get out in front of things. And so in my career, it was, very much like, hey, let's have tools that we can teach people how to do these things. But then let's also make sure that people, like Harold's a perfect example. When he started, he had a little bit of healthcare background, but not a ton. And, when Harold worked for me, I would include Harold in things that had nothing to do with really what Harold's job was at the time, because I knew that Harold had a bright future. He was a great guy. He had a, strong career ahead of him. And the more I could expose him to things that were outside of his normal day to day, the more he was going to learn and the faster he was going to grow in his career and be the person that he's become today. And even now at Northwestern, the person that I have that runs my process improvement arm of my team, which is also the teaching arm of my team, which is, they're doing lunch and learns and providing all sorts of educational material. She was a high school teacher. She has no supply chain background. She has nothing at all. Never worked in supply chain, never worked in a hospital. We hired her from being a high school teacher for 15 years. And she is an absolute gem and does a great job because she understands the importance of teaching people and the importance of letting them, understand that there's a path they can follow and they can grow their career. And it is absolutely one of the best pieces of my career is to watch the people that have worked under me flourish and grow. And I've got people that are all at all sorts of different organizations that work. The growth that's happened at Northwestern internally from people that started out, as frontline techs or whatever, that are now process improvement engineers or managers or even directors at this point. It is absolutely my favorite part of my career.
Just following up on that too, it's like maybe even earlier. I think once you build some confidence in that approach, maybe you're not so worried that people might leave. But early on, when you're trying to build a team and you're still proving yourself, did you feel a little anxiety about having some of these people develop and then losing them to other positions at other organizations where there maybe might not have been upward mobility available where you were?
So I didn't. From a normal, natural, I think, course of how people would think, I think most people would be, nervous and worried about it. It never was something I worried about. I, probably even told this to Harold along the way. I'd rather hire a really good person that's going to do great things for 2 years than hire somebody who's just going to kind of be around for 15. So it was really focus on, bringing in people that want to grow, want to continue the career, and are, sponges for knowledge, than just finding people that, like, hey, I know this person's going to be here for a super long time. I don't really concern myself with people leaving. I look at it sort of as like a good way for me to affect the healthcare supply chain, even out of my own organization. So if I can, grow and develop and teach people that work at, UC or Northwestern or whatever the case is, and they end up going to, TriHealth or Stanford or wherever it might be across the country, that's a little piece of, what I've done and developed that's now affecting other places in healthcare supply chain.
Kind of creating a legacy across the entire industry. Mike, I'd be curious, this is kind of off platform here, but on your hiring practices, you've already identified a couple of people that didn't really have deep healthcare background when you hired them. Is that something that's not the most important thing to you when you interview?
It's not. So, one of the coaching things I tell all the people that, work for me when they're interviewing is, do not hire resumes, hire people. So there are some things you need, like in a job where there's technical skills, you may need something off a resume, but I'm not a big resume person. Like, I'm a person that I'd rather sit down and get to know somebody. And if that's a good person that wants to, take on the world, that's a person that I want on my team. And I don't care what their background is. Like I said, I've got a high school teacher, on my team right now who's absolutely just kicking butt, because she's a absolute gem of a person, right? Who's super driven and wants to do the right thing, and she wants to see people grow and learn. So I'm not a big resume person. I'm really I really focus on hiring good people, and they will do good things.
I love it. Love it.
And Mike, I appreciate that. Just the aptitude and attitude outside of the industry that Hayes brought up, I think is so relevant. It's like, it could be good to great. It could be the Myers-Briggs assessment. It could be all those, but hiring the right people. And Harold said it loud and clear. I love the mission piece. How important is that, to understand the mission? And I think you talk about people you bring in, you worry about them leaving, to Justin's point, for 2 years, you grow them. People come back. I think the mission is so important. Like the patient, really, you're not touching that patient, but you're truly affecting a patient on a table and the clinician. So how important is that mission piece that Harold brought up?
It's the most important piece. When I started in healthcare supply chain, it was a stop while I was going to college. That was it. The reason I stayed was the mission, right? So that's the focus, is find people that understand, this is all bigger than them, and they want to be part of a team, and they want to see something that's, goes from good to great, and, provides our clinicians, and most importantly, our patients, with the best experience they can get. Like, those are the people that I want on my team. And I also, we're in healthcare. And our number one place we need to make sure that we're taking care of people is our own employees, right? So it's not just a focus at the external customer, it's really the internal customer, which is my team. And that is my number one focus, because if they're taken care of and they come to work empowered every day and they're happy with what they're doing, the rest of it's pretty easy, quite honestly.
creates that unity, that bond. It's a bond that pulls the team together just inherently, just like a synergy. It just happens naturally.
Exactly.
Harold, indirectly, Mike's talking about you right now. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on what was it like, especially you were a little bit earlier in your healthcare supply chain career. What was it like working for Mike? And did you feel that from the very beginning?
And Harold, before you answer that, I mean, you spent all the time on that wonderful resume. It was gorgeous, but he didn't even look at it. Do you realize that?
It was so pretty, one pager, tightened it up, made it really stand
it looked
out.
awesome. But meanwhile, he's like, I don't care about the resume.
The funny story is I was introduced to Harold outside of him applying for a job and actually came back to him and said, hey, why don't you come work here?
Okay, see, no resume needed.
Exactly. So no resume at all.
Yeah, tell that story, Harold. That's a great story.
Well, first off, Justin, I wish you would have asked me my questions first because Mike stole all of my Hopkins one-liners basically for the rest of the interview. So I'm going to have to pivot on the fly here to some of these questions. But and one of my, maybe advice, not to jump ahead to emerging supply chain leaders is networking. You've got to network in the industry. And that doesn't have to be, it could be going to conferences and things. It doesn't have to be that, though. It could be in the area that you live, meet the other supply chain managers and folks at your level at the other hospitals and get to know them. And the reason I bring that up is that's exactly how I met Mike, right? I was in Chicago and I was in grad school at Loyola and took a supply chain class and said, hey, if I stay in healthcare, it reminds me of engineering, a little bit different type of engineering, but maybe I'd want to do supply chain. And I started networking through some folks in Chicago that led me to John Stegner, who was our Mike and I's former boss, VP of supply chain at University of Chicago. And the next thing I know, Mike's calling me up on the phone asking, what's going on down there at Silver Cross, man? What are you into? And where are you looking to go with your career? Yeah, networking is a key piece to, advancing in your career and just getting to know people and opportunities.
I would just add on top of that, I totally agree with that on anything, right? I mean, I think that's wonderful advice for a lot of things. But our younger people, I think, I've got two young adults theoretically of my own, and they don't do a great job of that. And I would encourage anybody listening to this who has aspirations of getting into supply chain, you've literally got to pick up the phone. You got to call people. You got to have face-to-face with people.
In order to it's in person. I mean, maybe in person's old school now. I guess, we're all on camera, but we're in different parts of the country. But, in person goes a long way. You just establish a better connection. And all of my stuff in Chicago at that time was in person. I remember I traveled, downtown, right, to meet some folks, to network, ultimately to Mike. And it was all in person, making first impressions. They're super important. So yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah, I think part of what Harold said with that, in person, it kind of dropped a bit from COVID, right?
Yeah.
And while I think there's a nice balance for people to have with, hey, I can still sort of like balance my life and my job and not necessarily be in the office 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I think that personal interaction piece is really important, and as a health system that's spread out fairly large over Northern Illinois, I still make an effort every quarter for my, not just for my direct reports, but for my a good portion of my team to get together in person once every quarter.
I think that's really important because I still haven't met Hayes, and I don't even know if he's 5'2" or if he's 6'6". Justin, if he's 6'5", in person is huge. So Hayes on screen, he's like 5'8". I think he's 5'8". That's where I think he is. So I really like to meet him in person.
Yeah,
because
you gotta flip those heights. I'm the 5'8" guy standing next to the 6'2" former high school linebacker all-star in Tennessee. Like it's yeah, you got it backwards. So thanks for saying I got a big personality, Gary.
I was trying, Justin, and I knew Hayes. I wanted to beat Hayes to the punch before he came after me. So, but no, I think that's so important. And Harold, you brought it up. It's the networking. It's going to conferences. It's the meetings. Mike behind the scenes that happen are so huge. It's the meetings after the meetings, and you really get to know nobody. But those in person for our young people that Hayes brought up is huge, and TikTok's not going to do it. Right? It's not going to do it. You got to meet people and you got to grow.
This again might be off script a little bit here, and this might be for either one of you guys. Obviously, sounds like Mike, you did a really good job about. You said, I think you said sitting and talking to your team, your direct reports, and then occasionally with everybody. But do you have a standard protocol about a mentoring program or development program that you meet with your teams and things? And it's not only you, but do you have somebody that works under you that has them, that's mentoring somebody? Do you have any of that in place?
So we don't have at Northwestern a direct one-on-one mentoring program. We have a much larger sort of program where it's inclusive of anybody who wants to be a part of it. We do lunch and learns on a very consistent basis, and everyone's invited to them, where we'll have somebody that's presenting on a different leadership type of topic, how to, do a lot of different things within not just supply chain, but just in general around leadership. And, we try to make that program very all encompassing. So it's not like, hey, here's this singular high performer and this person's going to spend time mentoring that person. We really try to do it so it's very inclusive of everybody and, pull folks in. We have programs at Northwestern where, we take a bunch of, kids from Chicago who have finished high school, who don't know what they're going to do. And we bring them into our supply chain at Northwestern and give them 6 months of, training and teaching, and they get to go through all this stuff with us. And a lot of them end up coming and just staying at and working at Northwestern. We have an intern program that, we started 5 years ago with, we had 11 applicants for 5 jobs. This year we had 24. We have 24 interns coming in, and we had over 1,000 applicants for it.
Whoa.
So, we've really become like a destination for upcoming supply chain professionals, which is really exciting.
So impressive.
It's not just for, us or for them. It's for us too. I mean, our teams love, teaching. They love, when people come in and say like, hey, we want to do a tour of your supply chain. They love taking people on tours. Like they love being proud of all the great work they're doing. And we try to make sure that, we give them opportunities to show that to other people.
Harold, what if I throw that to you? Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah. One thing, and it's not specific to supply chain, one thing that TriHealth does that I thought was pretty cool is they have an ambassador program. And so what that is you get assigned an ambassador to you when you get hired at TriHealth. So I remember prior to me even starting, I'd accepted the role, obviously, but prior to me starting, I got a text from my ambassador, who's actually the VP of Population Health and Managed Care, and reached out to me ahead of time. And, it's really, he's built into me over 3 years now. And it's probably one of the closest people I have at TriHealth around the TriHealth way and how things are done at TriHealth, helped me network to different leaders at TriHealth. And we've become good friends since then. But that was something that was unique for me in my career to experience was the ambassador piece of it. So that's been pretty neat.
I love that because it's not just about mentorship in your particular function in the organization. It's mentorship about the organization itself, right? And getting your tentacles in. I mean, if you're going to be really anchored on the mission, you can't just be operating in your silo. And so having a program for when you arrive, to your new job where somebody helps you branch out immediately, that's huge.
Yeah. I mean, internal agility is key to the success of anybody in an organization, right? And if you're brand new, like I was at TriHealth, I didn't know anybody there or here. And so I need to get up to speed as fast as possible. And I rounded with a ton of people. I probably took the first 6 to 8 months just constantly rounding and getting to know people and making relationships. But this person helped me understand, hey, here's the list of folks you need to get to first. Here's what, political capital in the organization here. Just the landscape of behind the scenes is so critical to be successful, especially coming in at the VP level. They're looking at you for strategic direction day one. It's not, hey, you get a year just to hang out and get to know people. So you're kind of doing both at the same time. So that was really important.
I think another thing about the networking is we're talking about branching outside of your department, in getting, relationships throughout the organization. But I think going back to the networking and the industry piece, the same thing, is important there. And I wonder, do the two of you still collaborate? Even though you don't work for the same organization and, you haven't been together on the same team in a while, do you still collaborate? Are there ways that you still work together, even though it's not, the paycheck?
We were collaborating yesterday.
I'm talking about for my son's soccer practice. Yeah, I think that, so the answer to that's yes, but it's really a deeper question of how do you create a culture of people, a culture amongst a group of people that lasts well beyond when you work together, right? And I'll give some examples. So when I was at University of Chicago with Mike, there was a lot of different experiences that we had in a relatively short period of time that bonded, not just Mike and I, but a group of us together. And that lasts, 15 years later, and Mike can check me on it, but at the time, I think we were one of 3 institutions in the nation maybe that could accept a potential Ebola patient, right? This is OG stuff before COVID. Nobody even knew about that, right? So, and the amount of work and stress and anxiety that went into developing the plans to stand up a Ebola unit at a moment's notice was something that bonded us together, and I'll give a funny story. Mike's already going to know what story I'm going to tell, but, him and I were standing outside kind of the ante room, so to speak. And there was a, potential patient in there. They were treating, and Mike dropped his badge on the floor, and we kind of looked at each other in the eyes. And we both thought the same thing of, man, you're screwed. Like you might as well just get a rolling out. Right.
Nice knowing you.
And multiple layers of that story is that both of our wives were pregnant at the same time. So we walked out of the room. I think we Clorox wiped the bottom of our shoes, our hands, washed our hands, sanitized them, and then made a pact that we weren't going to tell either one of our wives that just happened, or we'd both be in the garage.
Yep.
They know the story since then, so I don't think they've listened to the podcast. We'll end up there. But, it's funny stuff like, it wasn't funny at the time, but it's things like that that bond you together, that creates a culture that endures, distance and future roles, and that you stay connected. So during, certainly COVID, we talked a lot, even if it wasn't, hey, do you have any 1860 smalls you can ship? It was just moral support, or the IV fluid crisis, or, there's been a bunch of things, but.
And Harold, it feels like we all go to boot camp. I feel like supply chain in some scenario or another, an ERP transformation, or you're standing up a new biplane, cath lab, moving your warehouse, or COVID. It's like you go through the system together, and you need phone a friend. You need someone to visit with, someone to reach out to. What are you going through? What are the same scenarios? I know during COVID, exactly what you said. We need supplies. Where are you getting them? How are you getting them? What cargo containers? Where are they shipping to? Where are they at dock? It was all that networking piece that you had to reach out to, and having that phone a friend, reach out to Mike. You have other relationships too that support that as well.
It just goes back to the whole, hire people for people and not for resumes or particular skill sets. Harold and I can teach, people just about anything about supply chain, but we can't teach you how to be a good person. And when you have a bunch of people that are good people that, understand the mission, care about each other, you will be very successful.
I'll throw something in here, my 2 cents here. For the last 24 years, I've got these 3 groups, hospital CEO group, supply chain, pharmacy, and we bring them together, every year. And while I've never studied it, as in truly studied it, I can tell you the most successful of any of those 3 groups are they're not the most outgoing, but they're the ones that are willing to get out and learn and meet and talk to people. And because they do that, when they do have a crisis or do have a problem or need a shoulder or whatever, the phone a friend, they've got it. And it's just, to me, the guy or gal who all they do is, they're in their desk and that's, they only deal with what they do and never go out, never learn and hear and explore. I don't think they're very good executives. And I think the ones that are the best are the ones kind of like you both have described, that are willing to get out and meet and greet and talk. That's how you get better. That's just my 2 cents. But it sounds like both of you kind of believe in that as well.
Mike, we hear the term, coaching tree a lot in football. Is that how you kind of look at this, or how would you relate, this conversation to that concept?
Yeah. So there's probably a couple things in this. I do. I want to support people's development. And if that means the opportunity lies somewhere else, I'm going to do whatever I can to help them out. I don't want them to be trying to hide that I'm, interviewing for a different job somewhere. If it's a great opportunity, I'm going to be the person that's, in your corner and, help you out to achieve what you want to get to. There's another woman that works for me, Alicia Behringer, who's been with me for, a while now, and she's extremely successful in the healthcare supply chain world. And she calls me a people collector. When we hire new people, they're like, "You're not going anywhere. You don't understand. You're now stuck in this world forever with Mike. Whether you're here at Northwestern, you go somewhere else. But it's just the way I approach people and I approach things. I look at it once you're, part of that Hopkins family, supply chain family, if you're at Northwestern, you're going to be part of it. But if you're somewhere else, you're still going to be part of it no matter what. And I think Harold sees that with, the amount of people that we still sort of, we've worked together in the past and we still all keep in touch with, and we have all these great shared experiences. And, we spend so much time at work. We spend more time at work sometimes than we do with our own families. And so it's really important that, you have a group of people you're around that can, support you and you can support them, and it ends up being a great bond for life that way.
We're pretty much at the end and kind of wrapping up, but I would just love to hear both of you reflecting on the discussion, what advice you have for other emerging supply chain leaders. And it doesn't have to necessarily be on this exact topic, but we're reflecting on careers and career development. And so I think some words of wisdom as we close this out would be great from both of you. Harold, why don't we start with you, and then Mike, we'll get your thoughts, and then we'll wrap up.
Sure. I think it's critical to find a mentor. Find someone that, you can tell has a personal vested interest in not just your career, but you personally, and then build that relationship over time. How have you, Mike, and how we've been friends for 15 or 16 years now. I think that's critical. I mean, it also helps to find a mentor that's hugely successful and well known as Mike, right? So maybe not everybody can have that luxury, but that's somebody that's went through it before, that you can bounce ideas off of, that, when it comes to a point in your career and you want to, do something different, you can call them and say, "Hey, can you help me with your network, your extended network, and introduce me to people?" Or what are you thinking about this? So I think mentorship is critical. That's one thing that I've taken from Mike and helped mentor others that have gone on to do things and have a similar relationships with folks that are still in the automotive industry, and talk to them a lot too, that were younger than me. So mentorship and I'm deeply grateful. So thanks, Mike. If I haven't told you, thanks for your mentorship. I'll do it on a podcast here. But that's something that's really life changing for me, to be honest with you. I mean, it literally changed the career trajectory for me and led me to where I am. So I think that's really, really important.
And I'll kind of just mine is somewhat similar to Harold's, but from a different perspective. As a leader, you need to get to know the people that work for you. Not just what their skill sets are, and not just, how well they do their job, but what makes them tick, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, where they want to get to. You can't teach and coach everybody the exact same way. Everyone's different. They all respond differently. The more that you know the people that work for you, the more you're going to get the best out of them. And sometimes it's, making a tough choice by putting somebody in a different role that, hey, the role they were in before, somebody put them in there because they'd been there for a long time or whatever, but it might not be the best thing for them personally. But making them understand like, hey, this choice isn't because you're doing something wrong. It's because I think there's something that you can do that's even better than you're doing today. But, the most important thing you can do is really invest your time and energy into really getting to know your people so you can do the best you can for them. Because unless you know them all personally and individually and what really makes them tick, you'll never be able to do that.
This has just been a great podcast. I really enjoyed our time with the both of you today. And I love connecting people on a podcast that are with different organizations. Telling a story like this is just great. And I think there's some nuggets of inspiration, I think, for people that are listening in, whether they're early in their career or they're just emerging into a leadership role today. I think it's really critical to really know the people, like you said very astutely at the end, Mike. So thank you both for coming on the show.
Our pleasure.
Really enjoyed our time.
Thank you.
Yeah, great.
It was great. I enjoyed it very much. So thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
That was Mike Hopkins, VP of Supply Chain at Northwestern Medicine, and Harold Dillow, VP of Supply Chain at TriHealth. What I love is we've had a lot of conversations around culture and team building over the years of this podcast. It's crazy to think we've been doing this a good long time, but I don't know that we've ever had two people that worked with each other to really talk about their experiences and how their careers went after they were no longer working together. It's like kind of a great little success story, Hayes, but also you could just really hear what Mike said at the end about developing the relationships. The proof was in the pudding. You could really hear it with these two.
Oh, good point. I mean, Mike clearly is a good people person. He made that abundantly clear to me in listening to him. But, having relationships with people who you work with, I think you even mentioned that many times you spend more time with them than you do your own family. So you might as well develop those relationships. And in this case, Harold's gone on to someplace else, and it sounds like they still talk to each other frequently. And so, yeah, obviously it's vitally important. And he did a really good job explaining it.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Power Supply. On behalf of Hayes and Gary, we'll see you next time for another Power Supply podcast.
Power Supply.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Power Supply. As a reminder, you can help support us by subscribing on your favorite podcast app or by downloading the smartphone app on your iPhone or Android. Simply search for Power Supply in the App Store or Google Play. The best thing about downloading the smartphone app is that you can access bonus content for certain episodes and view episodes in certain categories, like articles on the go and vendor spotlights. Are you following us on LinkedIn or Facebook yet? If you are and you love an episode or post, then let your social network know about it. Like, comment, or share our posts along with your thoughts and keep the conversation going. If you have any topics or guests that you would like to recommend for a future episode, just send us an email to info@powersupplymedia.net. We look forward to hearing from you.